here. All right, sweet. All right, friends. A lot of times I do some of these video responses, and for this one, I had to bring in the big guns. So I have Janis here with me, who also is the Instagram account God Has Not Given. Great to have you, Janis. I feel like I just saw you a week ago when we recorded your podcast episode for the new Evangelicals podcast, and here we are doing this again. So
I'm not mad at it. I like spending time with you, Tim.
Hey, all right. And we're both on the East Coast, so yeah, I'm all about that.
It's my neighbor.
I love it. Well, really quick, just so people kind of know who you are, there's a reason I asked you specifically to do this with me. So why don't you give people your Hillsong resume?
Yeah, I don't know what Tim is talking about. Never been to Hillsong a day in my life. Just heard of the church. No, I have been involved with Hillsong in some actual physical form since 2005.
Okay.
2005 until 2009, I was part of the Hills campus in Sydney, Australia. And then from the end of 2009, but technically beginning of 2010 until 2017, I was part of Hillsong New York. So
wow. And you were working, you were close with Carl Lentz, right? You weren't just like a typical, I show up on Sunday mornings and play an instrument. You were behind the scenes with him. Is that correct?
Yeah. Okay. When we first started having services, I was the stage managing team. So wow. I saw Carl Lentz all the time. And that was how we got connected. And then from there we were friends.
Right. You were friends, right? As all typical church friendships go, right? So
right.
Okay, great. So here's what we're gonna do for all of you guys watching out there. We're gonna go through this and we're gonna pause whenever we need to. So Janis, if you have something you want to say, just interrupt me. I'll hit the space bar, throw your comment in, and vice versa. And we're going to go through this kind of piece by piece. There's a lot of stuff in here, a lot of stuff that's currently happening as of this recording. And just for clarity, we're recording this September 22nd on a Wednesday evening. So I say that because if anything has happened after that, it won't be commented on, obviously, because it hasn't happened yet. So I do want to mention that. So we'll get started on this. If you haven't watched this, short documentary from 60 Minutes Australia, it's about 30 minutes long. It's very informative, very eye-opening. And we'll kind of talk about Hillsong's response as we kind of go through it. So, but yes, just so we're clear, Janis has, inside knowledge to how Hillsong works. She's worked with Hillsong New York. So her insight here is very valuable to this documentary. So, all right, you ready?
I'm ready. You ready?
I mean, I just showed you Dirty Loops, so I'm all amped up now, so I'm ready. All right, here we go. Oh, hold on, I got no sound. Let me check this again. Let me refresh. An ad, perfect. All right, cool.
It's turbulent times for the celebrity church Hillsong. It's been revealed this weekend. High-profile leader Brian Houston, who founded the hugely successful organisation, has now stepped down from its multiple boards. He faces court next month, accused of concealing child sexual abuse, a charge he denies. Tonight, though, we reveal more damaging accusations about the church.
I want to point out one thing. I'm sure there is a legal reason that Brian Houston has resigned from everything officially that is like Hillsong. Even though he says he's still operating it, there's got to be some legal reason his lawyers are telling him that I bet in court we're going to find out. And I bet it's to cover his own ass, frankly. So just want to point that out.
It is, and to cover the institution, I'm sure.
Good point.
And, and they're saying, oh, we just found out. And so like Brian announced it, I think this past Sunday. Oh, I just wanted to let you all know in full transparency, but this all actually happened a month ago. And like he didn't say anything until this Australian news outlet had already kind of given the news. Yeah. So Hillsong's transparency is always cloudy at best.
When you're this big, this was planned months ago. This is not like, God told me yesterday and I'm just resigning. This was orchestrated. So
and to say like this is the first time he's kind of being charged, but like this isn't the first time these charges and this kind of things come up. And so the fact that he has resigned this time, like as opposed to 10 years ago when we were first hearing about this, like I don't know what they've got, but I would say it's not looking great.
All right, good insight.
Two brave women who say they were violated by other Hillsong members. But what makes these attacks even more disturbing is the megachurch's response, an indifference to the victim's suffering so heartless it would surely make Jesus weep.
That's a good line.
Hillsong comes from pretty humble, some might say hokey beginnings.
That's definitely hokey.
While many other churches date back thousands of years, Hillsong was only founded in the northwestern suburbs of Sydney 38 years ago. But since then, it's been a miraculous, meteoric rise for this Pentecostal movement.
I'm pretty sure that they are the biggest church entity on the face of the planet at this time. And their music certainly is too. So that is definitely correct.
I think they get off on technicalities. I think there might be some the churches in China, some of the Asian churches have more numbers technically, but as far as influence
and money
and reach,
yeah.
Who else is
right
there?
Spreading to 23 countries across the world, even filling the iconic Madison Square Garden in New York. But all that glitters ain't gold. With a wave of scandals hitting the organisation both in Australia.
Founder of Hillsong Church, Brian Houston, has this afternoon been charged for allegedly concealing child sex offences.
And abroad.
The affair that brought down Hillsong Church celebrity pastor Carl Lentz.
When you give somebody so much power, they become God to people.
Can I just say, it's amazing that this woman, who I don't think is in church at all, has a better grasp on evangelical culture than most evangelicals do.
Yeah. No, she's great, and she has. And I mean, I don't know. Is it just because we were in it? But I feel like people from the outside do just see it clearer.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's a lot of times when we see other religious movements like Scientology, right? We're on the outside. Right. It's how can you not see it as we're boiling in our own water over here? So
right. And it's funny you say Scientology, because I've been thinking more and more about that in terms of Hillsong, because Scientology, their whole thing is the property, right? Yeah. And Hillsong is turning out to be the same thing. So it's.
Tonight, we uncover new disturbing behaviour within the Australian church. Young women violated.
And he pulled down my pants and my underwear. And he raped me at church.
And he grabbed me and put his hands all around my waist, in between my legs, touching my crotch and my butt.
But what's almost as bad as the abuse is Hillsong's response, in some cases protecting and still employing the men responsible.
Well, what they have done is engage in a textbook case of defending the organization rather than caring for a victim.
I don't care how you dress. I don't care what type of music you play. I don't even care as much about the messages you preach. If the least of those in your congregation and your community are not protected and not advocated for when they get hurt, then don't call yourself a church, because Jesus was all about that.
You know who that is?
That's well, I know they say later. I forgot.
Billy Graham's grandson.
That's right, Boggs.
He has a unique name. And I mean, this guy spits fire the whole episode. I'm like, yes, why do I know Franklin Graham and not this guy? They got the wrong Graham in evangelical leadership.
Right. Because this one wants to change it.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. That's a great point.
And today we're going to be taking you on a facilities tour of Hillsong College at the Hills campus.
Like every arm of Hillsong, the church's big, shiny college in suburban Sydney has a slick promotional video touting its wares.
Right now, we are in Hillsong College's state-of-the-art
I did want to say here, it kind of, burns me a little bit that like who they have fronting for the college, because these are not the people who would be in leadership. But to like have this brown man and then a woman and like a woman of color, like they're so strategic. Like they know what they're doing, but these are not the people who are going to be leading you. Like,
wow, my mind. Okay, what's so funny about interesting? I just thought to myself a second, like maybe a little while ago, like, oh, that's kind of cool that they're showing diversity, but you obviously see through the bullshit that I don't see through. And it's like, no, but the people leading it are still white men mostly,
absolutely.
And a few white women.
Right. But like if you were looking at the college and like, how good would you feel?
Right.
Like,
I got fooled.
Recognizing diversity and how great this is. They've got to be good.
Right. I'm like patting myself on the back over here. Like, oh my goodness. Also, I was going to ask you, do you feel kind of like, not maybe triggered, but just kind of like I've been part of these promo videos, because I've been part of church stuff where it's like you're shooting a cool video, got the cool gear everywhere, yeah. Part of me misses that, but obviously knowing what it's used for, I don't miss that at all. But yeah. Anyway, okay, good point though. Wow, that's great.
It's become a destination not just for students from around Australia, but internationally as well. American Anna Crenshaw moved to Sydney to study at Hillsong College in 2016, drawn to the church's vibrant energy. How would you describe the Hillsong community at that time?
In the beginning, it was awesome. It was a lot of fun, a lot of energy, just meeting new people and new friends from all around the world, and in Australia. It was really cool.
There was a strong social life for the young community at Hillsong College, but that friendly feeling was shattered in 2016 when Anna was at a gathering of several church members, including Jason Mays, a married Hillsong administrator.
I was sitting at a table next to my good friend, and then Jason was sitting at the end of the table. And through the night, then he moved and sat next to me alongside of the table. And that's when he put his hand on my thigh. And at that point, I just froze and didn't know what to do.
Feeling extremely uncomfortable, Anna decided to leave. But then Jason groped her.
So he was still sitting and I was standing next to him, getting ready to walk out. And he grabbed me and put his hands like all around my waist, in between my legs, touching my crotch and my butt. And he lifted up my shirt and was kissing my stomach, like, don't go. And then I was trying to pull away from him. And then I did get away, and he was stumbling out the door trying to follow us. And he was saying, I want to go with you. I want to go with you guys.
Do you have any doubt about what he was trying to do?
No, I think it's evident where he was heading and what he was thinking.
I want to point out, at the time of this recording, whatever this guy's name is, I already forgot it. He obviously has denied that it went down like this. And you shared with me his newly formed Instagram, quote unquote, run by his friends. Do you want to share a little bit about what you discovered on there? Because it was shocking to me.
It's basically, it starts with a video of him and his wife in a car, like eating and drinking and refuting all of this, trying to tell their side of the story,
right.
Which, that whole thing, there's a part where, it's gutter journalism. So it's like, oh, so you guys have your buzzwords, so we know what the package said.
Right.
And then, and nobody has reached out to us. Nobody has asked for our side of the story.
Right.
And I'm like, there are people who have once got within spitting distance of a Hillsong who have had media requests. We are to believe that nobody has thought to ask you guys for your side of the story.
Right.
The more likely thing is that you guys are under NDA from Hillsong and not allowed to speak to media unless approved by Hillsong. That's
a good point. Good point. He also in like his highlights on his Instagram account has like a friends witnessing account, which is it honestly is weak. Like the witness is like, yeah, his hand was on her knee under the table. Well, how would you know that? Did you go under the table to look? Like how do you have that visibility, right? So it just goes to, again, show that even the posture of Hillsong and even the man who did this, his posture is one of like, no, it's not true. Even though I pleaded guilty, it didn't really happen this way.
Right.
Like somehow, he
has that statement. He has the complete transcript.
Right.
So like it's only the transcript of his sentencing.
Right.
So it's nothing before that.
Right.
And then like yes, it's Australia, so their justice system is different. Fine.
Right.
But to know how much it takes for a woman to come forward and for there to be a conviction at all, like that's not a small thing. And for an incident like this, like it had the chances of this having been faked and then to get a conviction out of that.
Right.
What?
Right.
Like that doesn't happen.
Right. And what it is like, is Miss Crenshaw here just lying because she's bored? Like she just wants to be on TV. It makes no sense why she would lie about this at all.
No sense.
Makes zero.
And then, his whole thing, I was drunk, so I don't actually remember any of it, but I probably didn't do that. And I don't know. I've definitely heard pastors give sermons about how, when they were in their worst and they were drunk and they were in the bar and they would be preaching, because from the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks.
Yes, it's good.
So whatever you were doing when you were drunk,
right,
that still says something about you, my dude. Like,
no, I agree. Okay. Oh, my thing cut off.
Anna felt violated and didn't know what to do. Eventually, though, in 2018, she decided to tell Hillsong's leadership about the incident. But she says she didn't feel supported.
By the way, that's a great shot. That's a great shot, having that Jesus Hope for Humanity
the alleged
next to
offender,
this.
Jason Mays.
That's the city church building. I recognize
Jason's wife was then appointed Anna's new church leader.
Oh, God.
I felt like I was the one who was in trouble, not him. I felt like I was doing the right thing by coming forward, but they made it into like an issue that I was bringing up for no reason in their opinion.
Unbelievable.
5 months after reporting the assault to Hillsong, a despondent Anna reached out to her dad, who is himself a pastor at his own church back in Pennsylvania. When you boil it down, do you think Hillsong wanted Anna to be silenced?
No doubt. Hillsong Church would certainly rather not have this go public.
Obviously,
Ed Crenshaw was appalled when he
Totally
learned about
agree.
his daughter's assault and, more specifically, the inaction from Hillsong. Ed says it was only when he intervened that Hillsong finally handed the matter to police. Do you feel like if you hadn't have got involved, that Hillsong would have just swept this under the carpet and never involved police?
I have no doubt about that. And even once the police were involved, they didn't fully cooperate. Everything is centered on trying to keep her story quiet for 5 months, to try to obscure it, to try to minimize it, and to try to get Anna, I think, ultimately, to drop it.
You probably already came across the viral
I'm too cheap to pay for the paid
Rabbi
version of
Gutman
YouTube.
Locks.
They're not going to get my $10 a month, all right? You're not
Jason
going to get it,
Mays was
YouTube.
eventually charged with indecent assault.
But in all of that,
and
like,
pleaded
look at, so this happened in 2016. She came
Yeah.
forward in 2018. They tried to keep it quiet for 5 months. Again, like looking at this incident, what are the chances of this made up story
Right.
2 years later having this much effect?
Right.
Like,
Right. Absolutely.
none of it makes sense, to just be like, oh no, she just randomly made up this incident.
Right.
And because women love coming forward about these kind of things,
Right.
like every woman wants this kind of attention. Like, it's,
Right. No, it's good. Great point.
When the case came before the court here in Penrith, given the Hillsong employee had now finally admitted to assaulting a young female student at the church's college, Anna Crenshaw assumed he would lose his job. She was wrong.
Which is shocking.
In your mind, did
It's
you think,
shocking.
okay, that's it, surely Hillsong has to cut ties with him now?
I thought so, but then I found out from LinkedIn that he was given a better job during that time.
According to a statement from Hillsong, Jason Mays was given a second chance.
And he addressed that in his
yes, it wasn't a pay increase or something.
It was just a title change. And like one thing I want to say, like, I don't know if people outside of Hillsong culture knows, but like they're harping on like, no, he wasn't. He's just an administrator. He's not a pastor. Like he's just an administrator. So it's like, oh, just some random guy in the office.
Right.
And it's like, no, Hillsong culture, to be on paid staff, like that is a goal. And anybody on staff, like just, you have power. Like you have this level of prestige. I know so many people, like it would annoy me when I was there when people, I just want to be on staff. Like, I don't care what I'm doing. Like, I don't have any particular vision or mission. Right. I just want to be on staff. So it's like in the hierarchy, yeah, there are pastors who aren't paid and they're not getting the respect of paid staff.
Gotcha.
And then it's the paid pastors. Like, so it's not, oh, he's just some random.
Okay. So this this is like a big deal. If that person's on staff at Hillsong, they're automatically important and they already have power inherently, despite whatever role they're actually serving in the church.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yep.
And I do want to also add it is, I mean, I don't think I can't imagine any major company or corporation, because that's what Hillsong is, or a corporation, have someone plead guilty to sexual assault who's an employee, probably on staff time, and still keep their job. Like that is just unthinkable, right?
Especially essentially assaulting another employee, basically.
Right, right, totally. And for the record, this is what is so devious about this whole grace and mercy thing. We've talked about this before. Obviously, I believe in grace and mercy and redemption, of course, but that doesn't mean that you keep the same job where you've abused people. There are still consequences for the actions that you take. So this isn't a matter of being forgiven or this person, finding real help and being able to move on with his life and become a healthy, member of society. This is about that person not having any consequences by a church that employed him that put another employee at risk. That's why it's a big deal. And essentially, Anna isn't there anymore, but the abuser is, right? So at the end of the day, who's still there? Not the victim, which might be a good thing in this case, given who's allowed to be there. So
right.
Sheesh.
Guilty plea. Some other people did not fully corroborate Anna's version of events.
There it is.
They further said, one of the cornerstones of our biblical beliefs as Christians is forgiveness and redemption. It is important Jason is allowed this as well.
No justice.
However, the Crenshaws believe Jason Mays was given preferential treatment because his father is Hillsong's head of human resources.
Oh, there's some nepotism going on. That's a bomb drop,
The plot thickens, yeah.
Yeah, dad got involved.
Absolutely, yeah.
Does that send to other people within Hillsong?
I think as the father of a Hillsong college student, it says you can send your students to our college, but don't count on us to take care of them. And I think that's a horrendous message.
Totally.
Is it a case of rules for some?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, Jason Mays is part of an elite culture where it's rules for thee, but not for me.
Ooh, that's good. That's a word, Pastor.
The decision to shelter Jason Mays upset a number of people within the Hillsong community. So church leader Brian Houston tried to clear the air. Houston, you might remember, is close friends with Prime Minister Scott Morrison.
You just walk the path that God gives you.
A friendship that turned controversial last year when the PM tried to take Houston with him to a dinner at the White House. But when it came to the Jason Mays scandal, it was the Hillsong leader preaching diplomacy, reassuring staff that everything had been handled appropriately.
One thing I do know is we're not talking about a sexual predator here. We're talking about a young married man who did something stupid, got much drunker than he should, which is an issue we've got to keep addressing, and got himself in a bad situation. That's it.
That's it.
I'll let you comment on that because I got a lot of words, but you go first.
I mean, it's just, again, so clear, like who Hillsong values.
Yes.
Who he's worried about. And in light of like the charges he's now facing, in light of this ongoing deal with concealment and like protecting abusers.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah. Absolutely.
It's just, as much as Christians like to talk about roots and trees and fruit and like recognizing all of these things.
Yes.
It's like Brian Houston is who he is, but you cannot get away from the fact that his father was a child molester.
Yeah.
And he concealed that. Like, we don't know for sure when he knew what.
Right.
But we know he knew more than he told when he should have.
Right.
And it's like that's your pattern of behavior, and you've done nothing contrary to that. Like, you've done nothing to change that. So yeah, of course you are relying on grace and mercy, because that's what you want. Like, you want people to think the best of you as you continue to do the worst. Like, just believe me when I tell you we're not concealing anything.
Exactly. And also, I find the wording here actually interesting, because he just said that, whatever his name is, the guy got himself in a bad situation. Like, no, the guy put a woman in a terrible situation where she was assaulted. So he had the control. The woman did not. But also, he used the word, I think, stupid. That language is what I've seen a lot of men do whenever they want to justify something that like is bad, but they don't want to admit is bad. Like, I had a pastor who's like a anti-mask pastor, when I interviewed him on a podcast, tell me that the insurrection was just some stupid thing. It was just some stupid men. So no, that's downplaying the severity of what actually happened. And I also think about, I think it was the sheriff in the Atlanta spa shootings who made the comment similar to what Houston just said about how, the shooter just had a bad day. So no, he didn't have a bad day. The victims had a bad day because they're not here anymore. They're dead. And so it's that same kind of like mentality that fuels even what Brian is saying.
Right. And it's only like, this is a luxury afforded to white men. Like, white men get to be boys who make mistakes forever.
Wow.
Like, oh, you just had a bad day. It was just a mistake.
Yeah.
Like, they're just young men, they're allowed that, right? It's like nobody else is allowed that.
Yeah.
Like, even Anna Crenshaw is not allowed that.
Wow.
Like, the way they're coming after her, she had a bad night too. Like, she was in a stupid situation. Like, why do we not have the same mercy?
Yeah, good point.
But if you think that response was tone deaf, what
do.
Houston did next was even more outrageous.
To
deflect attention, he took to Twitter to share that Anna had also been abused as a child at her father's church in Pennsylvania. The Hillsong leader quickly realized the error of his ways.
So I want to pause so we can read this tweet. I'll read it out. It's a sad story, Brian says. A number of things in this article are factually wrong, but abuse is never okay. My understanding is that Anna was originally abused in her father's church in Pennsylvania. That makes it sadder. Whether abuse happens in Pennsylvania or Australia, it's tragic. Now, this is a great example of not staying in your own damn lane, period. And it's just complete deflection.
I don't even know how you could think that was a good idea. Like, how can you be so tone deaf, so detached from women,
totally.
in general?
Yeah.
Like, that you would think, like, why would you even need to put that in there?
Right.
Why? Right. It's a sad story. A number of things in this article are factually wrong, but abuse is never okay.
Right.
Whether abuse, wherever it happens, is tragic.
Right.
There's your tweet.
Total smear campaign. It's crazy.
Yeah, absolutely.
And deleted the tweet. He admitted to his mistake, saying, "I foolishly included information
your HR team was like,
for me to share.
Brian, what are you doing?"
To rightfully be more respectful of privacy, I deleted my comment. I apologize for any pain I have caused.
No, you don't.
I know
I'm
better.
sorry, you don't. You just don't. We all know.
Better.
It's what corporations do. This is how they act.
The tweet, while it was hurtful, it did just show everyone the attitude that I had been receiving from Hillsong for the past few years. And I think that apologizing just for the tweet without any apology for what has happened and what I've been through is very shallow apology.
Agreed.
Sadly,
and I'm tired of just apologies in general. Like, literally, what does it do for me?
Right.
And Brian's apologies are the worst, because it's never, I am sorry for what I did.
You're right.
I'm sorry if, I caused pain. I'm sorry for any pain I may have caused.
Right.
I'm sorry for how you reacted.
Right.
to what I did. I'm not sorry for what I did. I'm sorry for how you took it. Like,
this is a great example of what we talk about a lot, where the evangelical institution pushes individual responsibility and repentance on its followers. But when it comes time for them, for the leaders to do that, all of a sudden it's not their fault. It's the victim's fault. They don't have to repent. They don't have to atone. They just have to say that they're sorry. And then there's, we just move on like it never happened. That's not repentance. That's not even a biblical, even conservative evangelical view of repentance, So to see them totally bypass their own words, this is why so many of us can't take them seriously. Because we see right through the nonsense.
Right. Yeah. There's nothing real about it. Like, he literally will never use the word repent.
Yeah. Good point.
Is not unique. Since going public, she's been contacted by a number of other former Hillsong members who claim the church is more worried about protecting the brand than protecting its people.
It's a corporation.
Absolutely. And then after he was done, he just pulled up his pants and he just left without saying a word.
Hillsong has 30 churches in Australia.
Wow.
Not your traditional stuffy old buildings, but modern facilities like its Melbourne East campus that attract a modern young crowd.
Another ad coming up. You won't get me, YouTube. I'm not paying. I'm not doing it.
And it's way more ads these days, right?
Way more and longer. Okay, this is a total side note. I don't care. My son, who's 16 months, loves the show Yo Gabba Gabba. Okay, it's on YouTube. Every 5 minutes is a stinking commercial. And if you don't skip, I've seen commercials as long as 30 minutes. They're full Netflix episodes in the commercial. So I'm like, I don't care. I will wake up when I'm napping. I will hit skip. I am not paying for $10 a month for YouTube. I'm just not doing it. All right, here we go.
Who we'll call Catherine was one of the thousands drawn to what she thought was an energetic congregation that reflected her lifestyle. I'd imagine early days, it was quite enjoyable.
Yeah, I had a lot of fun. I was making some great friends and I was having the time of my life, being a youth leader. And I love God. I'm a Christian. I love the church. And so to be able to help out like that was super fun at the beginning.
But one night in 2018, when Catherine was a volunteer at Hillsong, she stayed back late with the male worshipper to help pack up after a Bible study class.
I just want to put a trigger warning here for anyone who has, experienced any kind of sexual trauma or abuse. This part gets pretty intense, so you might want to skip the next few minutes. I'll put a trigger warning at the beginning of this episode too. I just want to emphasize this particular part is pretty intense, so just be aware of that.
And next has left her traumatized ever since. She claims she was raped by a fellow Hillsong member.
And he closed the door and he turned off the lights. And I said, "What are you doing? Are you okay?" And then he grabbed my hair. He just pushed me onto this office chair. And I said, "What are you doing? Stop. No, this isn't happening." Because in that moment, I knew what was going to happen. And he pulled down my pants and my underwear. And he raped me in our events office at church. Sorry.
A church must be the last place you would expect something like this to happen.
I had no reason to think that I wasn't going to be safe. It was really violent. It was just completely filled with anger and rage and just hatred. It was just the scariest thing I've ever experienced in my whole life because he was so much bigger than me. And then after he was done, he just pulled up his pants and he just left without saying a word. I felt really ashamed. I felt really guilty. I was a virgin, and that was the only sexual experience that I had ever had, and it was non-consensual. And I just wanted to pretend it didn't happen.
Catherine spent several weeks trying to forget the attack, but eventually the emotional torment was just too much. So she says she reported the incident to a youth pastor. This is a very serious incident that you're telling them about. What was their response?
He wouldn't let me speak. I walked into there and I said, something really bad has happened. I'm visibly upset. I'm shaking. I can't breathe. I'm crying. I'm hysterical in front of this man. And I'm like, he grabbed me. He hurt me. He did it. He touched me. And I was just going on. And every time I would say a word, he would say, that's not for my ears to hear. That's not for my ears to hear. You go sort that out with him. That's not for my ears to hear.
I mean, that's pretty unbelievable. That's unbelievable.
It's so many layers of just problems on top of problems.
Yeah.
So it's you're put in these positions, and she's a youth leader. So you have like this, you have to be there. You feel like you have these responsibilities, and you're working with someone. So then this is not a safe place anyway. So then something unsafe happens. And then even when you go to, to go to speak to whoever the youth leader is or whatever, the chances are that person is completely unqualified to be dealing with things like this. We don't think about how many people are in these volunteer positions, even the paid positions, who do not have qualifications that they should have. Other people, you can't walk into any other kind of sphere and just work with children or work with young people without having some kind of education, some kind of background. Whatever. But it's like you've got these regular people with authority they shouldn't have, dealing with things they shouldn't be dealing with. Like that man, obviously did a horrible job. But really, what more could you expect? Like he's probably in that position to do a horrible job, honestly.
Yeah. I mean, it is. What I keep thinking about is like, obviously humans anywhere can do bad things. Like we understand that, right? Like nothing can be ever 100% foolproof in any kind of way. We understand. But whenever a bad thing would happen like this, you would expect the institution or whatever system was set up to really do a big gut check saying, oh my God, how did that happen? And what hole do we have to plug in the dam, to really, or is the whole thing so crumbled we have to rethink the whole structure? And that is what I think is so terrible and damning about this particular documentary is just how unwilling Hillsong is to really have an honest conversation saying, how did that happen? Why was that person left alone that way? How didn't we maybe vet this person, right? It's just there's other, it's not credible. It's always back to the victim not being believed. And that is the worst part out of all of this, especially considering the Bible that they claim to follow clearly states that love believes all things. Or the idea is that we believe the best in people. This girl has no reason to make this story up to end up on 60 Minutes several years later for 30 minutes of fame. It makes no sense, No. So,
and I'll say, like, as someone who has been, in the media and been in some of these interviews, like it is exhausting. Like it brings up things like it's just constant trauma. And I don't have this story. And like my story is exhausting, when they're asking questions. Nobody wants to do this. Like if you want to do this, especially with a story like that, you would have to be a psychopath. And if Hillsong is then going to say, no, all these people are psychopaths.
Right.
Well, you had them all volunteering.
Like,
you had them all with you.
Yeah.
So either way you go, like your checks are not good.
Right. Exactly. It's good.
And says that Hillsong leader made her feel like she was the problem, telling her she needed to focus on repairing relationships. She was so upset by that lack of support that in 2019, she decided to leave the church.
When the institution, I don't care whether it's Hillsong or any other church, when their first response seems to be more focused on protecting the institution than the vulnerable, wounded person, that is a problem, not just for any institution, but for an institution that claims to follow Jesus.
Yes. Thank you.
Javigian is the grandson of famed American evangelist Billy Graham.
Christ belongs to all people.
Boz now works as an attorney for survivors of sexual abuse. He advised Anna Crenshaw in her case against Hillsong after the young American student was indecently assaulted in Sydney by a Hillsong staff member.
Who's
Boz
still
says
employed.
He sees a pattern of behaviour in the way the Australian-based church goes about its business, trying to either silence or intimidate those who speak out about suffering within the organisation. In Anna's matter, Hillsong eventually commissioned a law firm to carry out what was supposed to be an independent investigation. But Boz claims it was more of a PR exercise designed to protect Hillsong's reputation. Specifically, he alleges that law firm was less about independence and more about intimidation.
Just because you call something independent doesn't make it so. This is the law firm that's allegedly conducting this investigation. Underneath their signature line, it states, the most feared law firm in the world. That's how this law firm, who's supposedly going to engage in an independent and an objective investigation into Anna's claims, you tell me what sexual abuse survivor is going to feel comfortable participating in a process that's led by an organization that defines itself in that way.
I want to make the connection here. This is why I've been saying from the beginning of this documentary here that Hillsong is not really a church. It's really a corporation with Jesus language attached to it. And that's a big distinction to make. You know, the current evangelical model is much more corporate in its structure and in its legal status, you know, in really how it functions as far as hierarchies, than it is a community of people, you know, attempting to love their neighbor well and to worship Jesus, essentially, right? And this is a great example of that. These big, humongous churches they're huge. They make a lot of money. They're very profitable. They have big PR firms to handle this stuff. Big ones. And this guy here is exposing what kind of, you know, independent studies they use. Shocker. It's the one used to paint them in the best possible way. It's kind of like back whenever it was with like the big, like in the food industry with all these studies coming out saying, no, sugar isn't that bad for you. Turns out it was all the food studies that were sponsored by these mega corporations that made a lot of money off of sugar, you know, or like, you know, it's like when the fossil fuel industry says, no, climate change isn't really a thing. Look, our independent scientists have given us this report. It's like, well, you have an invested interest in preserving the status quo for your own benefit. Same thing here with Hillsong to a T.
Absolutely, because it's the worst of both worlds. So it's a church, so they take all the things that they like about that, and it's a corporation, so they take all. But I'm like, I would rather you would be a true corporation, because then you would have true HR and you would have true reporting policies. But you don't have any of that in place.
Right.
And so, you know, volunteers, who do you talk to?
Right.
Because, you know, just like her, you're talking to the person above you. I don't want my department to look bad, I need to shut that down.
That's
like, because I'm trying to get to paid staff, or if I'm on paid staff, I'm trying to stay there. Like, so I can't have this.
No, that's good.
You know, and they're independent investigations. They had an independent investigation for Hillsong New York when all the Carl Lentz drama kicked off, which they started 10 days after. You know, because they didn't think it was going to make that big of a stink. Like they thought they could quietly do that. Then they couldn't. So, okay, we're going to have an independent investigation. To be part of the independent investigation, please email Darren Kiddo at Hillsong.com. How is the first step in your independent investigation, someone who is part of Hillsong, and then he's going to pass it along to the law firm.
Right. Yeah. Right.
What? Like, you guys, you're not even trying.
Yeah.
At least make up hillsongreporting@gmail.com.
Right.
Like
something. Yeah. And sneak it in.
Pretend it's going somewhere else.
Right. Right.
But you don't want to, because that's part of the intimidation. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
We want to hear your stories. Say it to us.
Right.
Say it to us first, and then we'll pass it on.
Yeah.
Like.
Okay. Yeah, that's a good point.
Given what you've seen in Anna's case, would you feel comfortable sending your children to study with Hillsong in Australia?
No. Absolutely not. Anna Crenshaw, when she moved to Australia as a young person, was no doubt a vulnerable person. And she wasn't protected, and she certainly wasn't cared for.
Yes.
That's something like I didn't even think about, like going over there. Like you're going in, the best of intentions, and you have no idea.
Right.
It's a church, so and it's Hillsong, so you're going to something good.
Right.
But like when you think about how many people are traveling internationally, like you're going to a whole other country, and you are placing yourself in the hands of these people.
Totally.
And it's a whole other culture. It's a whole other loss. It's like it's a whole other everything.
Right.
And so they just have these people. You're just naturally coming in at a disadvantage.
Right.
Like,
and you're paying them good money too to do this.
Oh, yeah.
Right. And again, let's be clear. Let's assume, like, worst case, let's assume an abuser snuck into Hillsong on staff and this happened, right? You would think if they really cared, the response would be, oh my God, how could this happen? Anna, what can we do? This guy's fired. We'll pay for your lawyers. We'll take, it's like, you would think it'd be like all this stuff, right? Let's look at our leadership structure. You would think that, especially assuming they're a big church, I'm sure they get a lot of these. So I would assume your wheels will start spinning a little bit here, but to see their posture of defense, I think deep down, honestly, it comes from the position of, we're doing God's work. Look at all of the fruit. Yeah, there's a few bad things, but look at all the fruit. And once you start doing that, once you start thinking that without you, God can't do what God needs to do, that's when all of a sudden you become God, right? Now you're God. And this God that you serve is suddenly underneath of your feet because your mission is too important to stop whatever it is that you're doing that is causing harm.
Right. And a lot of people in Hillsong, like they don't know it. It's not a conscious thing, but like you are equating Hillsong with God, because when we're having conversations and you're telling me, no, but all the good Hillsong is doing. And I'm like, but at what cost? And why would God need that? Like Hillsong can go. Like if you, even if you are in it, if you are not comfortable with the idea that this doesn't need to exist, Hillsong can go. Hillsong loves to talk about, we're just one, we're a global church, but we're all part of, the church family.
Right.
Why can't Hillsong be gone?
Yeah. Right. It's an honest question. God worked before Hillsong and they will work after Hillsong. So let's not pretending that Hillsong is just, if Hillsong goes down, how will the gospel go forth? Well, hopefully not nearly as colonized, but anyway, it's good. All right. Another ad coming up. Let's see what we got for this one.
These $60 Japanese smart patches are taking the world by storm.
I don't know what that was.
Just apply them.
I'm sorry, YouTube. What the hell kind of ad was that? How do I say never show me that ever again? Ever.
Complete uninterest, usually. No.
Maybe I will pay $10 a month.
Catherine heard about Anna's
we tried
story.
it the nice way.
She mustered up the courage to share her own experiences on social media. And with those claims now being aired publicly for the first time, all of a sudden, Hillsong's leaders cared a lot more about what she had to say.
Oh, yeah.
And after I posted that, I got contacted by Hillsong asking if I would sit down with them and have a chat about whatever it is that happened to me.
The impression I get from hearing that is that Hillsong didn't really care about your story until you started speaking publicly about it, and then they wanted to get on top of it.
That is exactly what happened. They do not care at all about the fact that I was assaulted. They just care about who I'm going to tell or what I'm going to do about it and how that will affect them.
So almost 3 years after Catherine first told a Hillsong pastor and was shut down, she was finally heard. At last, Hillsong reported the alleged rape to police.
I want my abuser to never, ever, ever have the chance to be able to do that to another person again. And I also want Hillsong and the pastor that I told to be held accountable for not doing anything about my abuse after being told that I was abused. And I want to make sure that they can never, ever, ever hide anyone else's abuse.
There are growing concerns about Hillsong's culture, not just at its churches in Australia, but overseas too, particularly in the United States.
Here we go.
Where the organisation's, at times, celebrity-obsessed mindset has upset many members.
Justin, this is your second time at Hillsong Conference. Yes. And what's different this time about being here?
I just think my faith grows every day. So my faith is stronger than 2 years ago. Better, stronger, wiser, kinder.
You know, I really feel like in a lot of ways, Justin is a victim in and of himself as well. Being that, I mean, listen, right? You get discovered on YouTube. You grow up right in the spotlight. That's got to give you a lot of trauma in a lot of ways. And here's a pastor to help pick up like your journey back to God. And unfortunately, it's Hillsong, which I mean, on like a theological level, offers some of the shallowest theology anyway. You know, I'm just being honest. You know, even when I played their music and like, you know, Hillsong's whatever, they're great. They do great music. We all knew like their theology is just like an inch deep, you know. And I feel like this whole celebrity thing, it's a whole different conversation, but such a point that we have to talk about in church culture. This celebrity thing, even in secular culture, needs to go, but to have it seeped into, you know, church culture is just crazy to me. It's bonkers.
Yeah. And like Hillsong, we knew it was, very shallow theology. But the thing was, right? No, Hillsong is great at getting people in. So like that's what we're doing. We're just getting people in.
Right.
The problem is that Hillsong would then not be honest about that. Like we talk about it kind of behind the scenes. But like if you are just getting people in, then you also need to be letting people go. Like let people go, find something deeper, find something better.
Right.
But Hillsong's thing was like, no, if you're not getting fed, that's on you.
Right.
You're not feeding yourself. Like that's not our responsibility. And it's like, what is your responsibility then?
They fed people haze and sick bass beats, you know.
Yeah, it's a great experience.
It is. No doubt. I mean, I listen, I played their music and seeing some of these videos of them in concert, I'm like, man, I mean, I miss playing those songs. I do. I'm just being honest, you know, like they're, for what they are, they're written well. So I get the sugar rush that they offer, but there's just nothing beyond that, you know, and you can't live on sugar.
And they know that. And like Hillsong, from the college, from being involved with it, like you don't think about it at the time. But it's like, oh, Sunday you're doing this, Monday you're volunteering here, Tuesday you've got your connect group, Wednesday you've got an exchange service, Thursday, I think there was something. On the Friday was like Friday Night Live. So it's like it's no accident that these churches make sure your whole world becomes a church. They are taking up your time. So of course these are the only people you know. Of course this is the best music you've heard. Like this is all you're hearing. This is all you're doing.
Right.
And so it all seems like wonderful. Like when I left, you know, I was like, I don't think I want to find a different church. I want to find something more diverse. I want to find something, you know, where women aren't treated like this.
Right.
And when I left and they're telling me you're not going to find what you're looking for. Like we're doing better than anyone. And I had to leave not knowing that they were wrong.
Right,
like
totally.
when you are in it, you're in it. That is all you know. This becomes your whole world.
Yeah.
Like it's funny to look at this now and to be like, oh my gosh, like we were so enamored with Carl Lentz and whoever, but you could go across the street and people would have no idea who any of these people are. Like they're so huge in our worlds because we made this our whole world.
Yes.
But like they're nobody. And that's why Carl Lentz is so fascinated with Justin Bieber, because this is someone with true like worldwide social clout. So of course they want to like get attached to them and keep them at all costs. Like Justin Bieber, how are you up here? Me and Carl are best friends. That's my bestie. I've been in this church for years.
Right.
But you're snuggled up with him on the Hillsong conference stage?
Right.
Interesting.
Interesting. Right.
Hey guys, welcome back. We're here at Hillsong.
Hillsong Church is no stranger to celebrity members, and perhaps none more famous than pop sensation Justin Bieber.
That's why I just want to love people more. I just want to love Carl more. You're doing a good job with that.
So, man. Justin, this is your second time at Hillsong Conference.
Yes.
And what's different this time about being here?
I just think my faith grows every day. So my faith is stronger than 2 years ago. Better, stronger, wiser, kinder.
The man Bieber is snuggling up to is Carl Lentz, then the head of Hillsong's New York chapter.
I pray for fresh fire in this room. I pray for fresh grace in this room, Lord. May people write songs.
Hillsong's head office in Sydney had grand plans for New York. As the saying goes, if you can make it there, you'll make it anywhere.
New York, they were meeting at like a nightclub.
Oh, another ad. Breaking the moment. These are weird ads, man. I gotta censor these. I gotta cut these out. I'm cutting out these ads.
I think
I'm
that
cutting them out. Some
Hillsong
nonsense.
New York City, like
that is some nonsense. Whatever the heck that ad was, no way.
I told you, they said we tried it the nice way, and now we're just gonna provoke you into paying for this.
Fed off that energy, right? Like, we're different, we're so cool, we're so edgy, you know, nobody else has church in a club, and that was really talked about a lot, you know what I mean?
Prayer meets party.
Right, exactly.
Megan Fallon started attending Hillsong New York in 2011.
God will bless you in areas you didn't even know you wanted to be blessed.
But she soon realised this was a church where leaders had a rock star-like reputation and the spending habits to match.
I wanted to ask you, is it weird seeing Carl like do what he does, you know, looking back on it now?
It is. I feel, especially lately, I think, because we're coming up on November and coming up on the kind of anniversary of all of this.
Yeah.
And like, I mean, I left in 2017, but we were buddies. So like, the last time I saw him was, last June. So just before like all of this. And I think like for me, I'm like, whatever, I was already gone. But I get really angry these days just thinking about how much, again, like people made this their whole world.
Yeah.
And the thing was like, oh, I'm your pastor and I'm here for you. And like when people try to leave, you know, you got to stay planted, whatever. I'm like, all of this happened and you guys bounced. Like, you're not dead. You were still out there.
Yeah.
And you have not said a word to anyone. Like these people believed in you. Like these people gave their lives to this church, to trusting you, to trying to become you in a lot of ways, you know, so many people. And then it meant nothing to you at the end of the day. Like you walked away, blew this thing up. And like, as far as we know, like no remorse, not a backward glance. Like you just went on. Yeah. And so I mean, I wonder about all of them. Like, what do they really believe? Because I can't believe that you actually buy into all this. And I don't know when it changed. Like, I would like to think maybe you did believe it in the beginning. So I don't know when you lost it, but you can't believe any of what you were feeding us. So to watch this, I'm like, oh, these are great performances. He was a great.
Right. No, did I lose you? Oh, there you are. Okay. I lost you for the last second. What did you say? You said it's a great performance.
It's a great performance. Yeah. Like he's a great performer.
Yeah.
As nanny for one of the senior pastor's families, she saw firsthand how donations to the church made in good faith by members were then blown on corporate credit cards.
I know those pastors. Like, that is honestly one of the meanest women alive.
Wow. Okay. I believe you.
It was constantly going out to dinner, nice lunches, breakfast, anything. So like if me and you went out right now and got dinner and we talked about church once, we could expense that on the church card, right?
So, I mean, you were being paid a pittance. How galling was it to then see all these church leaders
in New York,
were dripping in designer brands and going out and living the high life?
Yeah, I mean, it really hurt. And I actually so I got paid it comes out to about $4, but that's on the high end of some of the nannies that worked for the pastors. Like some of my.
Let's just, I mean, people have to understand this. Let's spell it out very clearly. Hillsong, their music alone brings in tens of millions of dollars a year, easily. Yeah. Their tithes bring in even more. We know that Hillsong has money. They're in New York City, one of the most expensive places to live, like in the whole world. And they're paying people to watch their kids, or not at all, either below poverty wage. I mean, $4, I'm assuming an hour, you know, it's like, it's worse than what servers make in this city, right? You know, not including tips. Or they're volunteering to do this just to watch kids. It's crazy.
It was all volunteer. And to look back on it now, like we knew, obviously we know we're Hillsong, right? So we know Hillsong has money, right? But it was always at the same time, like the sense, like we are, as a campus, church campus, are barely making it. Like we have to give, like we have to, because we know this is an expensive city, and we know like paying for whatever.
Wow.
And I think now, like we don't have a clear concept of how much 10% of everybody's is. Like it was a lot for me, but it's like, oh, this is the least I can do, right? Because you're not just giving 10%, like you're also giving your offerings, and you're stretching yourself for the heart for the house, and like all of this stuff.
Right.
And I think we all think, well, we're all struggling, like we're all doing our bit. So of course our church is struggling. Like we're all just barely making it. I'm barely giving, they're barely giving. So the church is barely making it. And to look back now, I'm like, oh, that's so dumb. Like I would have had no concept of how much money was coming in on a week-to-week basis. And they would also, be like, well, it's what is it, 10% of the people who are doing 90% of the work. Like most people aren't giving.
Wow.
So you feel like, yeah, like I'm doing my bit.
Wow.
Like most people aren't.
Wow.
So yeah, we're barely getting by.
Wow.
And like I remember thinking, well, I'm pretty sure we're being subsidized by like Hillsong Australia. Like we're not making a profit here. Like they're still paying for whatever. And especially because, all these pastors, they moved here, and at first they were in the nice building in, Brooklyn, and then they all moved to Jersey.
Yep.
And it's like, wait, how are they affording this?
Right.
Well, I guess that's part of their salary. I guess that's part of what, Hillsong is paying.
Right.
And then, Carl would, tell the stories of, no, like the things I have this Rolex. No, one was my dad's, and this one was a gift. And these things are gifts. People are giving me things.
Right.
And it's like,
right.
Okay, I guess, but I don't know. But then again, the programming, right? Who am I to question?
Oh, right.
Whatever. And why would I not want them to have nice things?
Right.
And,
right. It's such a maze.
Why am I comparing myself with them and what they have, and who God chooses to bless? Why should I be worried about that? Like it's like it's just all the different dissonance going on in your head. Like it's so noisy. Like you can never really get on top of it until you do, and then you're like, oh yeah, I gotta go.
Right. This is crazy.
This is crazy. Yeah.
Friends are like, wow, you're hitting big. And so it's really terrible. We're like scrubbing their toilets and taking care of their kids when they're out, it was hard.
Megan says there was a clear delineation between the Hillsong elite, who hung out with celebrity friends, and the everyday members like her, who she believes were exploited.
Celebrity was like built into the culture there, Justin Bieber or Selena Gomez or, basketball players, like it was in the culture.
A church is a place of worship. It sounds like the leaders there at Hillsong worshipped celebrity.
Oh.
Yeah, at first it's exciting and, really cool. It's this thing that you buy into. And then when you look at it on the outside, it's like, wow, it's like actually really ridiculous.
Yeah, just what you said.
After seeing the inner workings of Hillsong, Megan says she and several others raised concerns about the culture to church leaders, but they were quickly dismissed. So in 2014, she quit.
The Holy Spirit can do that. Come on, somebody.
But the rot continued to set in for years under the watch of Carl Lentz, the leader of Hillsong New York. That was until late last year when scandal engulfed the church, with allegations some male leaders were having inappropriate sexual relations with young female members, and other reports of extramarital affairs.
He said, among you there must not even be a hint of sexual immorality.
He was one of the country's best-known pastors, but this Thanksgiving, instead of healing a congregation, Carl Lentz is working on damage control.
Lentz was sacked by Hillsong for what it described as moral failings, as he admitted to cheating on his wife, with his mistress going public.
When you give somebody so much power, they become God to people.
Yep.
And I think people forgot the concept of religion and beliefs.
Not bad.
And I think that people look at Carl like he's God to them.
After Carl Lentz was fired, Hillsong opened an investigation into the culture of its New York church. But a number of its current and former members say it's just another PR exercise.
For so long, myself and so many other people were meant to feel like we were the problem, you know? And so for this to come out, it kind of was like, wow, like we weren't the problem.
How would you sum up the culture within the church at Hillsong in New York?
I mean, when I was there, toxic, you know, Hillsong Sydney, Hillsong Australia definitely fueled that flame. Carl Lentz was totally Brian
another
Houston's
ad's coming.
Boy.
I'm afraid to look.
Hi, I'm Nicole Hockley from Sandy Hook Promise. I know this is hard to hear, but
Yep, we're going to skip you.
You know, somebody once told me something that it was very simple, but has stuck with me for many years. They said, the higher you go up in church leadership, the less likely you are to encounter Jesus.
Dude, that is good.
And I have to...
That is good. And that is true. That is true. Wow.
Yeah. I've been trying to think like, because I mean, I don't go to church, don't want to, don't necessarily believe in it anymore. But I'm like, well, people want this, people need it. It's like, how could we make it less toxic? And I'm like, should there be, should it be like a politician? Should you have term limits? Should you only be allowed to like be here for a certain amount of time? Like, I don't know, because it's the longer you're in it, the more stake you have in it, especially if you're getting paid for it. Yeah. Especially if you're Carl Lentz, you're getting paid a ridiculous amount. I said, I don't know when he stopped believing it. Right. When it all became a full performance. Right. Right. But you're getting paid well to do this. Yeah. Like, why would you stop? Like,
I mean, I think this is a great, what you're saying is a great point of, you know, I think that the idea of people gathering to love people, to worship, is a human thing that has always happened in all different contexts and cultures outside of even Christianity. But when you map this modern evangelical framework over that, I think that's where the toxicity comes in, you know, like it's this like corporate CEO, now celebrity, you know, emotionally manipulative, you know, give us money because God tells you to kind of idea that I think we've come to know as Christianity, and certainly can be even called that, but I would call it toxic Christianity. And I think the question is like, how do we undo all that and get to just small communities of friends who are living their lives together and loving people really well and journeying through the deep, complex waters of theology and church practice, which is really big and wide, you know? So I'm with you all the way, all the way.
That sounds like Jesus almost.
Well, you know, I'm no expert, but
with great sadness, that's been my experience in the work I've done for the past 30 years. And something has to change.
Yep. Boz Javigian has spent his career holding many church leaders accountable in a court of law. He says when it comes to Hillsong's head honchos, both in Australia and abroad, some deep soul searching is required.
We've created a celebrity culture in the church. Pastors have become rock stars. Yep. Pastors oftentimes live in these big churches, live better than most of the people in their congregation. Yep. And you create that culture inside of a church that ultimately results in that pastor and those leaders becoming less and less accountable as they become more and more insulated. Yep. And that creates problems.
Do you believe that there is a genuine desire within Hillsong to get its act together?
I can tell you this, that you cannot begin looking at the future and planning for the future until you've properly addressed the past. If you love Jesus, then my goodness, start acting like him in the most important moments of life. And that is when you are approached by the hurting and wounded, stop everything you're doing and reach out and expend yourself for them. Isn't that what Jesus did over and over again? That's what the church should look like. And unfortunately, that's hard to find these days.
This man's a prophet.
Hillsong rejected our request for an interview. We put several written questions to the church, and it issued a statement declaring our investigation was gutter journalism, adding Hillsong Church takes any claim of assault extremely seriously, and we allocate significant resources so that all can attend our services and events in a safe environment.
Well, not enough, Hillsong, clearly.
But that's in stark contrast to the experiences of former Hillsong member Catherine, who's still trying to put her life back together following her time with the Australian megachurch. What do you think of Hillsong these days?
hate is a very strong word, but it's the word that I would use. I hate Hillsong Church. It is not a safe place. I would discourage anyone and everyone from going there because it's not safe, whether you're a young person, whether you're an adult, whoever you are, it's not safe.
Hello, I'm Tom Steinford. Thanks for watching 60 Minutes.
Woo!
It's not safe.
It's not safe. I mean, listen, I don't want to beat a dead horse, but we've said it already. These institutional systems that we've mapped over Christianity and, following the way of Jesus and all of that, it's toxic. It's completely toxic, and it's destroying people for real. I mean, real people's lives are destroyed. And again, I think this would be a different conversation if in this case Hillsong was truly like concerned and wanted to change things to minimize this type of harm to people and to put abusers, in prison or wherever they have to be, to be out of the way from harming people. But time and time again, up until tonight, it's just defense after defense after, slur after Hillsong staff members who have pled guilty to sexual assault, saying how it's not as bad as we all think. It's a consistent
No, it's not sexual assault. People keep saying that, and it's not sexual assault. Like, he wanted to be very clear about that. It's like it's an indecent assault.
Right.
But if I tell you I got, convicted of indecent exposure,
right?
What is that?
Right.
Like,
just a stupid thing. I just did a stupid thing, right? I mean, it's just this downplaying, and it needs to go. So, any final thoughts on this?
I'm just really fascinated, like, at how we got here. Because I'm like, it's all so clearly prosperity gospel.
Yeah,
and
for sure.
And so many of us looking at Carl Lentz, looking at the pastors of Hillsong, looking at them living way above us.
Yeah.
And like it was always problematic, but so much of that dissonance was, well, no, they are living like that because it is proof that they are being blessed. Like, this is God's blessing.
Right.
So God is
You're right.
obviously choosing this. God is obviously supporting this.
Yeah.
But that whole line of thinking is just antithetical to everything, because we never would have followed Jesus, because there was everything about his life would have said God is not in this. If we were mapping things the same way.
You're right.
Right.
Yeah.
Like this guy with this little ragtag bunch who's about to be killed.
Right.
What?
Right.
No.
Right.
And so Hillsong is good at playing the persecution game. They want to pretend like they're being persecuted all the time. And this is more proof, right, that they're doing good, because all these people are trying to hurt us. But when you're looking at Hillsong and you're looking at people like me, you're looking at the people speaking to Hillsong, against Hillsong.
Yeah.
Like, you always have to ask, what do I have to gain from this? Like, who's trying to get what and who's trying to keep what?
Right.
Like, if I get everything I want tomorrow,
right.
What do I want? I want Hillsong gone. Like, how does that profit me?
Right.
Honestly, or these women, asking, we want Hillsong to be accountable. We want Hillsong to be transparent. Like, how is that wrong? Like, to ask for that.
Yeah.
So, yeah, like we all have this programming. We are all tuned to celebrity. We're all tuned to prosperity. Like, we're all tuned to success and things that look good and feel good.
Yeah.
But it's like, that's not blessing. Like, that's just life.
No,
and that
good.
is playing the game, and it's corporations, and it's the world. Like, there's nothing wrong with that. Like, that just you do this and this is going to happen.
Right.
But this is not God.
Yeah.
Hillsong is not God.
Right.
And I'd say Hillsong is not with God at this point. Like,
well, thanks for doing this with me. It was as enjoyable, I guess, as it could be. It was fun having a co-pilot on this one, because sometimes these videos I'm just like, oh goodness, there's just so much to hit, so thanks for doing it. And I'm sure we'll do something like this again when the next step in the Brian Houston saga comes to light.
You think something else is going to happen?
I hope not, but if I was a betting man, probably. All right, we'll do it again. Thank you.
Thanks for having me.